Okay, so in this class, what you'll find is the files that we work on here are way too big to email. So for you to turn in your assignments, you can't, emailing doesn't really work. There's some of the files here, depending on the work that you're actually doing, can climb into the, half a terabyte range easily. So anyway, not that bad, just trying to scare you. But at any rate, there is a class server. Most of you guys are probably unaware of this. There's actually a server that functions for classes. And so what I will do is, if I need to get files to you, I will put them on the server. If you need to submit your homework, you will also put that stuff on the server. So again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of this. Don't worry about any of this if it doesn't make sense right now, because when it comes time for you to turn in your very first assignment that is image related, we will do it all together here in class. So for the people who have Macintosh, whether you're working on your own laptop or you're working on the studio computer, is anybody here working on these guys, the iMacs that are in the studio itself? It's fine if you do. There's no problem with that at all. It's just that there's a shortcut for you guys that makes it easier to do exactly what I'm going to show everybody else to do. What I care about are the people who are on Windows and people who are also on their own laptops. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this actually works on my computer. So to get to my server on a Macintosh, again, if you take a look, there was a PDF that went out for Mac, there's a PDF that went out for Windows. If you'll open up your respective operating system so that you can follow the recipe. So if we take a look at the Macintosh one, that's the one I'm going to go through right now. Hang on one second, because that was where I had the wrong file open. So in the Macintosh file right here, on the beginning of both of these, let me kill these lights too. You guys might as well put you to sleep, right? You might as well enjoy it. At the very top of this, there are instructions for how you get to this server that's on, it's a network. If you're here at Columbia, if you're actually on campus, it's relatively simple. If you're off campus, you need to access the server via a VPN. The VPN that the college uses here is called Global Protect. So you'll see the first paragraph, and this is for both Macintosh and Windows, it doesn't matter. These are instructions for how to actually get the VPN and download it. So basically what it does is, what a VPN does, it allows you to be off campus but tunnel into the campus network, and so that you can do the stuff that you would normally have to be here to do. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's not the thing I'm going to go over today, because right now, don't get consumed with actually doing a VPN right now. If that's something, as we get into it, you find that you really want to do, then there's the instructions on how to do it, and you can explore it, and that can certainly help you out, right? What I'm more concerned about, though, is being on campus, how you connect to the server. So in a Macintosh world, what you do is you go to your Finder, and in your Finder, if you look up at the very top, I'm going to hide everybody else and close this up. Up at the very top, there's a Go menu. If you click on your Go menu and you come down to Connect to Server, so take a look at the screen, see where I'm at. So the Go menu in the Finder, Connect to Server, and open it up. There is actually a space for you to enter a server address. Now, this is all the same shit that everybody is flipped out about in this class. So, that, oh my God, he's got me putting in server addresses and I can't believe that. Don't get too consumed about it. This is all, it's just a phone number. It's basically what it is. However, it's a very specific one. So, for all the Mac people, are you at this screen yet? Okay. This is what you need to put in exactly. As a matter of fact, if you, yeah, this is all, I've got this in all the documentation. So anyway, this is what you need to put in exactly. So small a is an apple, small f is in Frank, small p is in Paul, 172.172.208.221. Now, once you get that put in there, don't hit anything to go yet. What you want to do is simply click on the little plus. Hopefully there will be a little plus down at the bottom that you can actually click on. That will actually copy and will just remember that address for you. It will put it in the space right down below it. So for the rest of your life, when you come in and you hit this Go menu, all you need to do is click on that AFP 172, whatever, and it'll put it in for you. You don't need to remember it. But if you click on this thing, so if you clicked on that part and hit connect, it should connect you to class projects. You'll also see, if you take a look at the tree of how we actually got here, what's interesting is that's not showing me the tree about how we got here. This server resides on a weird, they named the server TKAL, T-I-K-A-L. So if you see a partition on your desktop that's called that, that's what it is. But what we are looking for is, once you go to that, you are actually looking for the class projects file on that. Can everybody find that part?
So,
let me see what you get. Oh, you have to log in. You're going to have to put in, and your login is exactly the login you'd use for these.
Oh, okay.
So it's your name and your password. It's exactly your Columbia login when you get to that screen. Sorry, once you do it the first time, you don't have to keep putting it in. Did you get access? So once you get access to that, there's a set of folders inside that thing. There's a folder for every instructor that's at Columbia College. The one that you're looking for is my last name, Engelhard with an E. You need to find that and then simply click on Engelhard, and you will see 3 folders inside our class partition. Is everybody good on this part? This is another thing I'll tell you about this class. So I'm just going to throw this out right now. I'll throw it out a couple of times for the first couple of weeks, but then I'm not going to throw it out anymore. It is an enormous waste of time for me to say to you guys over and over and over, is everybody okay? Is everybody there? Is everybody blah, blah, blah? Is there anybody having trouble? All that kind of stuff. It just takes time. It's a waste of time, right? I am begging you right now, the minute something isn't working for you, the second something is not working for you, do not bury your head. Yell out, Verser, I'm not there. Verser, stop. Can you, nope, this isn't working for me, whatever. I need you to do that, because otherwise I'm going to lose you, and I don't want to lose you. Does that make sense? Last semester I had somebody sitting right here that pretty much every 20 minutes through every single class we took was, hey, wait, Verser, whatever. But she got through. So I need you to do that for me, okay? Stop me if something isn't working right or isn't working the way you think it should or the way I'm telling you it should be. Are we good on this part? Okay. Everybody stand up really quick. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Hand over your heart. Oh, left hand over your heart. Raise your hand and say after me, Verser, I promise. I will stop you if I get lost. The minute I get lost. All right, you remember this now. Wow, I made that up on the fly. Aren't you impressed? Okay, inside that server on the class projects in the Engelhard folder, there's a folder called delete. You don't want to ever put anything in there. For some reason, there's weird files that I can't get off the server, so this is just for me as a place to store it. I can't get rid of it. There is a Dropbox. The Dropbox is where you will drop your files, your assignment files. You cannot see inside the Dropbox. You'll see the box, and you'll see your file go on it, and you'll see that it's actually being copied to it, but you can't open up the Dropbox and actually look inside. I will show you at the end of the class, everybody who's dropped the stuff, so that you can make sure that your stuff actually got there. Does that sort of make sense? And then finally, there's a folder called Resources. And if you click on Resources, you will see there's a couple of things in here that are for the entire semester. The only one I really care about you copying right now is this one that's up at the very top. It's called Assignments Complete FA23. It's 10 gigabytes worth of files, information, whatever. I sent out an announcement this morning asking you to either bring a hard drive or a laptop today so that you can copy this stuff over. If you didn't get that, or if you're already on campus and you don't have that with you, that's not a problem. This is available to you whenever you're on campus. You can do this tomorrow, you can do this tonight, it doesn't really matter. There's nothing in this folder that you're going to need before next week. So you have a week to get this folder, but I need you to copy the folder. It gives you everything you're going to need to work through this class. So there's never a, oh my God, I got the flu, I couldn't get to school, I couldn't get the working file, I don't have the file, so I can't do the homework. That just all goes away. You'll have everything. In addition to that, you will have also a huge number of PDFs that deal with issues that you should simply put into your little library that you keep of resources for how you work, how you retouch and how you work in Photoshop. Yes?
It says that I don't have permission.
So we run into this permission stuff all the time. How many other people are running into that very same thing? Fuck. Okay. Did I let you copy any of it? No. Okay. This is still where you're going to submit your homework, but I've got to walk around for this. But before we get to that part, are there any questions so far about how to get here? Okay. For the permission thing is why I can't throw the delete folder away. The permissions on this are, I don't know, somebody, got really high and went in and decided to screw with the server. Anyway, I need to get the Windows people on this first as well. So for the Windows people, let's go through that really quickly. I don't have a Windows machine here, but I do have the PDF of it. So for the PDF of Windows connecting to this, again, this whole first part up here is about downloading the software for a VPN. That's not what we're doing right now. You do not need this VPN if you are doing your work here on campus. You can get to this server without that existing. But if you do want to actually stay at home or you're not on campus and you want to actually tunnel into Columbia's network, whatever, then you would actually go through the issues that are all laid out here. But for the Windows people, hopefully this is a little bit simpler. So follow the steps with me. So at the very beginning, you're going to right-click on your Start menu, and you are going to click Run. You can tell how much I really do this stuff. Your next move is there's a dialog that should appear, and in this dialog, you need to enter this verbatim. So I'm going to read this out to you, but you could also copy and paste it right off the PDF, which would be a whole lot easier. But nonetheless, it is /172.20.208.221 class, capital CLASS, space, projects, capital PROJECTS, and then hit the OK button. Again, you should reach a place where it's going to ask you to sign in with your Columbia ID and password. And then you should get to that same screen. It'll be a list of folders of every single professor here at Columbia. You're looking for the Engelhard one, ENGEL. And inside that, you should find the class projects folder. I'm sorry, you should find the delete folder, the Dropbox folder, and the resources folder. Everybody good on this part? Did you guys get there on the Windows people? Okay, good. Then hopefully you guys will be good to go. If you are working on the computers, on the iMacs that are actually here, instead of going through all of that, if you look at your dock, there is an icon that looks like a little white cube with a blue apple on it. Do you guys see that? If you click on that, it should take you immediately to this partition. Again, it'll get you to the class projects. You're going to have to find the Engelhard folder, and then you should be good to go. Are we good on this part? Okay. So, sorry. I have two jump drives here that have the complete assignments folder on it, and I've got one hard drive that's got the same thing on it. All of them have adapters that will allow you to use USB-C or just pull the adapter off and use just regular USB. So hopefully it will connect to any machine that you've actually got. The Macintosh people can use any of the three of these. The Windows people have to use the jump drives because these are formatted for Windows and this thing isn't. Does that make sense? So I am going to simply start with you. I need everybody to, we're going to do you and you. Copy those files over and then pass it to the person next to you, whatever. We don't need to get into what's really in there right now. But I would like you to do this while we're still in class right now so that everybody's just got this stuff. Questions about this? Are we good? Okay. So if you can tell, I've got what sounds like a slight cold. It actually isn't a cold, it's allergies. I'm allergic to ragweed. Anybody else in this room by any chance? How are you feeling right now?
I took allergy meds this morning, so I'm surviving, but
Yeah. It's fucking awful right now. So anyway,
I'm like, I can't breathe.
yeah, exactly, yeah, I know that feeling, yeah. So at any rate, okay. Whew. Okay, back to the modules. We are going to jump into it all right now. So, again, if we go down to our class overview for what we're supposed to be doing today, during this class, we're going to cover file naming, Photoshop preferences, color settings, workspaces. We probably won't do Wacom tablet setup today. You're going to do that next week. I will actually send you a thing about that. Environment, color theory, and custom brushes. We probably won't get to brushes today either, but that's all right. So that's basically what I'm going to try to get accomplished today. I've already gone through the introduction part, which isn't really on here. How am I doing? Oh, okay, good. I would have settled for that, but okay. So, I'm going to probably show you what's on the folder that you're actually copying over so that we can go through that part really quickly. I'm not going to do it off the server. I'm just going to take a look right here just to give you an idea of of what you're actually going to be copying, and this will be for our week number 1 right here. So if you take a look at the thing, again, that folder that you're going to be copying, this is what it will look like. There's 14 weeks in here. We actually are lucky that we get to do all 15 weeks this semester, but that only happens for classes that are on Tuesdays, and we happen to pull that. So it's great. We have one extra class more than you'll have in any other class. Inside this folder, you will see that there are some files. There's actually an assignment. This will be true for every single one in here. There's the PDFs right here about how you do these connection parts, so there'll be all of that part. For the global VPN, if that's something you've decided that you're going to actually try and you want to do, this is basically the instructions for how to do it, and this is also the software to do it. If you're on a Macintosh, you use the Global Protect PKG. If you're on Windows, it depends on the Windows machine that you're on. If you're on one that only does 32-bit, you do this Global Protect MSI. If you're on a Windows machine that does only 64-bit, you do the 64-bit one. If you're on a Windows machine that does both 32 and 64, you use the 64-bit one, whatever. It's just simpler. These are the latest versions of it. Trying to navigate to the website to get this stuff downloaded, you would think you would, it's insanity. So at any rate, that's what's going on right there. Remember I told you about the PDFs. So inside of this PDFs, there are, again, the reiteration about a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, the academic integrity, the attendance policy, all of that. However, there are other things in here that are extremely important that we're going to talk about. I'm going to come back to this once we do some of this work in terms of setting and preferences and all that kind of stuff. I'll come back to this just to show you what's going on in here. But that's basically what's going on here. These are resources for you. And then there's other things in here that you, again, they're either files that we're going to work on or for assignments or stuff that you should be saving in your library, all this kind of stuff. Make sense? Okay. So the first thing that I actually want to deal with in all of this is this naming convention, because it's easy and it's it's just quick to get it out of the way. So how many people in this room have a solid naming convention for your work? Oh, well, this doesn't work. Trust me on this. How many images do you make in a year? It's scary, right? And you shoot film and you say a lot.
Yeah.
The people who are shooting digital, I mean, so in my career, shooting fashion, whatever, classic, I only shot medium format. I had a camera that only would do 10 frames on a roll of 120. So if you don't know what that means, it doesn't matter. It's sad, but it doesn't really matter. If you do know what that means, that was my life. And I would, for a typical single outfit, I would typically do 5-6 rolls. So 50, 60 shots. That was it for a given outfit, right? Now people do 300, 400 frames of the same thing, and it's just, and then trying to get your head around all of that and manage all of that, it's an impossibility. And no matter how good you are in Lightroom, when your Lightroom crashes and all that kind of stuff, it is a nightmare. A good naming convention will actually go a long way to making your life a whole lot better. I'm going to show you mine. This is the one that I use, but it's really funny. I've been using the naming convention for years, and there's all sorts of places like that. Well, the people who represent photojournalists, the trade organizations, all that kind of stuff. They all come out with their best practices stuff, whatever. They're almost identical to what I do. So I'm just going to throw this out to you and suggest. And here's the thing. The thing that stops, and most people hesitate about using a naming convention or changing and that kind of stuff, whatever, is everybody thinks that, fuck, I've got, 6 terabytes worth of images. I got to go back and rename every one of those. Do not think that way. What you need to think of is that what I'm going to do starting today going forward. Don't worry about the old work. You can find it the way you always found it. But because if you say to yourself, okay, well, I've got to go back and rename 6 terabytes worth of work, whatever, that's just too daunting. You'll never do it. But if you start today, going forward, change your life. So this is my naming convention, and there's some very specific rules about this for reasons that I will go into a little bit. But this is basically what it is. If you take a look here, it starts with Y for the year, followed by the month, followed by the day. It's not 2 digits for the year, it's 4 digits for the year. Why? Well, in the year that we're in right now, we're in 23, that could be a day. So again, it's just, if you see a date that's done like this, you know right away exactly what it is. There's no question about that. In the U.S., we're not used to starting with year. We're actually used to starting with month, day, year. That's how we typically do dates. Completely wrong. The problem with starting with month, day, year is that then when you look at the chronological order of all your naming convention, all of your Januaries will be together, all your Februaries will be together, all your Marches will be together, and all your years are going to be scattered across that madness. If you follow this convention and you take a look at it, Everything will be in perfect order chronologically. The beauty of it is that if you are working in Capture One and you're doing sessions or that kind of stuff, the very last one on the list will be the current one that you're working on because it will be the newest by definition. So right, that's how it starts. Then there's an underscore because you can get in a whole lot of too many numbers, too many, whatever. You need to break it up a little bit so you understand what it is. That's followed by what I call CCC, a 3-digit code. It's a client code. For me, I was a commercial photographer. So if I was shooting for Neiman Marcus, it was NEI. If I was shooting for myself, it was VER. If I was shooting for Carson's, it was CAR. If I was shooting for Saks, it was SAK. It's just a quick 3-digit code that gives you some idea of who you did this for. Underscore. Keywords, plural here, and this matters. It's 8 letters. If you spell out keywords, it's 8 letters. You're going to put a keyword in here. It can be any keyword, but it should pertain to the subject matter of what you're shooting. So if I'm shooting for Neiman's and I'm doing beauty, my keyword is beauty. If I'm doing kids, it's kids. If I'm doing women's fashion, it's WF. I mean, however you want to work this part out. But it gives you this quick reference. So all of a sudden, just with this alone, I can actually go in and know exactly when I shot it, I know who I shot it for, and I have some rough idea of what the subject matter is. You will be shocked at how quickly you can find work that's 15 years old. Yes?
I have a question. So do you use this in the camera?
No.
So you don't change this in the camera?
No. So when you bring your images into Lightroom,
Yeah.
you do a name change. If you're shooting tethered, you can actually set up either Lightroom or Capture One to do the naming as the files are actually coming in. Make sense? So when you shoot, do you shoot tethered?
No.
You should know this about me. I haven't shot a picture that was not tethered since I quit shooting film, and that was in 2004.
Another question in terms
Shoot.
of that. So for some reason I can't. So I have a new Mac, and I shoot Canon, and for some reason I can't connect my Canon to my Mac.
Then bring your camera next week,
Okay.
show up 20 minutes early,
Okay.
bring, if you need, whatever cable your camera has, so whatever USB version it has to connect, and we'll get you set.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And it holds for everybody. I'm here to actually help you. A big part of what I do that's important for me in this is not just to teach you about Photoshop. It's about shit like this. You've got a career in front of you. And any best practice that I can get into you guys right now is only going to serve you for the rest of your life. And that's really the goal here. But at any rate, back to the naming convention. There's another underscore after keywords. Again, keywords is 8 letters. You can't do 9. You can do 6, you can do 4, but you can't go over that. There's a finite limit on this, and that is because there are Unix servers in the world that can only handle files that have 32 characters in their name or less. Take it from me, shooting in New York, in studio, we've been shooting all week. Art director says, can you upload your week to me so that I can look at it over the weekend? And I said, sure. And I turned to my digital tech and I said, you need to upload that stuff to the client so that he can look at it over the weekend. He goes, okay, fine. And he selects it all, hits the upload button, and we all leave. And we come back in on Monday morning and not a single file has been uploaded because he actually put a dot in on one of these. A dot is considered a character. He had a 33 character name on all of the files, and the art director didn't get a single one of them over the weekend. And guess how pissed off he was, and guess who lost the client? Me. Guess how pissed off I was. So this shit has ramifications. So at any rate, then my case, it's followed by a 2-digit number. Now for me as a fashion shooter, the reason that made sense is that I would have 15 garments to shoot in a day. So it would just be garment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. It was just a way to keep the shots separate. Then followed by another underscore and then a 3-digit number. That's actually the frame counter. So in this scenario, this allows me, 3 digits will give you 999 images, 999 frames. If you need 4 digits, if you're the kind of person who's going to bang out over 1,000 images, you need to remove the S from keywords. You lose one of the letters for your keyword, but you can get an extra digit for your frame counter. Make sense? And if you're doing more than that, you want to break it up anyway. So, people always say to me, Reverser, I don't shoot fashion. I don't care about that 2-digit code for the shot number. Rethink that. Let's say you're a wedding photographer. Your shot 01 is the bride getting ready in the morning, hair and makeup. Your shot number 2 is the trip to the church. Your shot number 3 is the wedding. Your shot number 4 is everybody milling around after. Your shot number 5 is the after party. Your shot number 6 is the honeymoon. Whatever, you can break it up. The worst thing that you guys can possibly do, though, is spend a day shooting, 10,000 images and have it numbered 1 through 10,000. That gives you no structure. You're just shooting. I need to find the toast that happened after dinner. Good luck. But if you've broken up your day, it's so easy to find it. Yes?
I still struggle with understanding as like when I bring my photos to Lightroom.
Right.
And then it gives me all these, like all the shots that I've taken. How do I break? So I just need to do extra work. Is that what you're saying?
So you can either do a rename on import, which means as they come in, so typically you shoot to a card, right?
Yeah.
And then you actually bring the card into Lightroom.
Yeah.
When you actually do that import, Lightroom can do all the renaming for you.
But it doesn't understand where my 0.2 scene is happening, right?
Oh, actually that's depending on how you import it, it will.
Oh, does it?
Oh yeah, well no, again, it's you doing the import.
So I have to go in.
So you would go in and say, okay, I'm going to import this first, 200 with shot 01. And then I'm going to do the second 200 shot of whatever. That's how you would do it.
The 3 digits would continuously go throughout, or should I go back to?
No, you would start all over. So again, you would have shot 01 and frame 001. And then you would have shot 02, frame 001 for 02. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's just a way to try to break up. Think about how you guys shoot. You shoot thousands of pictures. You've got to start breaking this up into something that's manageable. And it has to be consistent. That's the only thing I'm asking you to do. You can look at this and say, way too much trouble, I'm not doing that. That's fine. Whatever system you're going to use, though, realize it should be the one that you use for the next 80 years. And is it good enough? Is it robust enough to handle that? There was a guy when Lightroom first came out, there was a guy who came to train the faculty here on Lightroom. And he had folders called like flowers. That was his keyword. That was the name of his, so flowers 01, flowers 02. And it was like, oh my God, are you out of your mind? You can do a keyword search and get all your flowers, but if that's how you've named all his stuff was all over the place. There was no order to it. So something he shot, a flower that he shot 15 years ago is right next to the one he shot yesterday. It's so daunting, you give up and you say, fuck, I'd rather shoot it again. Make sense? So anyway, this is the system I use, the reason that I use it. I've already talked about the file links for this. There's a whole explanation in here. I don't care what you do, but you should seriously consider this. If you're people who shoot in Capture One, you use the exact same naming convention for your session minus the file numbers, minus the frame numbers. Make sense? Yep. Has everybody gotten? Yep. Sure. Okay. Phew. I need everybody to open Photoshop. All right, you guys all good? Everybody, yep, here. I need everybody to open up Photoshop for me quickly, please. Not quickly, you can take your time. So I'm going to guess that your Photoshop looks different than mine. So ignore how this looks right now. We are actually going to build this workspace for you guys. This is the workspace that I use for retouching. The advantage of it for me is it keeps all the important information up front for me to actually be able to see at a glance. I don't have to open things, I don't have to move things around, I don't have to change things, whatever. I'm going to show you how to build this thing and save it. All of everything that you see on my computer for the whole rest of the semester will look like this. I can strongly suggest that you guys actually use this workspace for retouching, but I certainly can't require it. I mean, you don't have to use this space to do retouching. But you'll find as time goes on that you actually might want to. Now, Photoshop is actually capable of doing infinite number of workspaces. So by design, it ships with something that's the workspaces that one's for photography, one's for typesetting, one's for, they've got a whole cornucopia of them. This is just one for retouching. Again, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it, but this is what you're going to see, and I think you will find working in this space makes your life a whole lot easier. Yes?
Will there be a video on how to make this workspace?
I'm sorry, what?
It's already set up like this?
Yeah, that's okay. We're going to still go through it because you're going to change yours and rebuild it just so that you know how to build a custom workspace, because everybody should know how to do this. So we're all going to build this together. However, we're going to start with preferences first because most of your preferences are probably set up wrong. So that's where we're going to start, and again, please do this with me. For those of you who are working on the iMacs right here, hopefully this is already set up. We'll find out. For those of you who are on a laptop, great. For those of you who want to save this workspace, I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you save your workspace, then you can go to any computer anywhere in the world and load your workspace, and you don't have to go through setting it up all over again. Make sense? Right. Okay, so that's what we're going to go after here. So to get to preferences, again, this is one of the few times that I'm going to do it. For the people who are on Macintosh, you come up to the Photoshop menu, drop-down menu at the very top on the left-hand side, and you come down to Preferences. You'll get a flyout window, and you come across to General. For people who are on Windows, it's actually, I think, a much better design. You actually go to the Edit menu all the way down to the bottom, and that's where Preferences is, and you should then get something that looks exactly like this.
How do you get to that without like opening a file?
Oh, if you've got this whole screen in front, that's a damn good question.
Because like
Yeah, I know exactly what your problem is.
I have to open a file to even get to the. I mean, I could just open a
Yeah,
file.
just open a file. If you don't have a file to open, you can hit Command N or Control N.
So this is a blank screen is okay?
Oh yeah, you're fine. As long as you can get to the preferences, that's all you care about.
Yeah, also, do I have like a wrong version or something? I don't have the 23 on top, and then mine's is settings, not preferences. Doesn't make any difference.
Oh, no, yours is actually the newest.
Okay.
You're ahead of me. Unfortunately, that's not Adobe, that's actually Apple. So that's a brand new computer, isn't it?
Actually, not.
No, then it's the brand new system software.
Probably.
Yeah, so are you on Ventura?
Could be.
So this would be a great time to have this discussion. Again, I've told you already that my job here is not just to teach you how to retouch. My job here is to also prepare you for the real world out there. I currently am working in, my system right now is Monterey, which is 2 software versions behind what is current. I only upgrade when somebody comes to my house, pulls a gun out, puts it to my head, grabs my dog, puts another gun next to my dog's head, and says, I'm going to fucking kill you both if you don't upgrade. That's what it takes for me to upgrade. And the reason that is that because right now my computer works. The minute you upgrade, you are in for a world of hurt. You're just like, I don't know how long you'll be down, but you'll be down. And I just know. I don't care about the latest, greatest shit. I don't care that it shows me see-through windows. I don't care about any of that shit. I work at a production level. I want my Photoshop to be fast. I want it to be reliable. I want it to just open up. I don't want to go through all of that shit. So I'm just telling you right now, be very careful about your upgrading plans, because I know everybody in this room has been bit at least once. Anyway, okay, so starting here at the very beginning, we're going to blow through this pretty quick, hopefully. So at the beginning, if you select your General tab on the left-hand side, you get this whole set of possibilities that go here. Now, you do not need to change your preferences to do what I do. I'm just going to tell you why I do it, and then you guys can decide. There's some behaviors, like tabbed behavior. I hate it. It's really not conducive to working, to doing compositing when you have a bunch of images open if they're all tabs, unless you're really good at remembering what tab is what image. And I'm not. Again, I told you guys, I have no memory at all. So the fact that I've got some obscure name, file, and a tab, whatever, and that's the image, no. I want my images all scattered around my screen. If I need to buy space, whatever, I'll collapse some or I'll do something else. But anyway, so that's me. So at any rate, going down here, like I said, we're going to try and blow through this pretty quick, and we will take another break soon. Starting at the very top part right here, the first thing I do, most importantly, is uncheck Auto Show the home screen. That's that annoying screen that everybody's got that you can't get away from. If you didn't have that screen, you wouldn't have had to have opened that file to get to the Photoshop workspace. And it's also a place where Adobe's trying to sell you shit. I mean, it's like a storefront, right? They've already got enough of my money. I don't need to give them anything more. So anyway, I uncheck that. Use Legacy New Document. The New Document interface, if you just want to start a blank file, just Command-N is the shortcut, or Control-N is the shortcut for it. By the way, there are half a dozen, maybe a few more, keyboard shortcuts that I live by religiously. I'm not a keyboard shortcut guy. You will not have a test in this class about keyboard shortcuts. If I can do it with a keyboard shortcut, why? Or I can do it with a menu. What the hell's the difference? If I can do it, I mean, it may be slower if I'm the menu person, but that's got nothing to do with what you want to do, right? So again, people who memorize all that shit, that's great. That's not me, so daring. However, the older version of the new dialog box allows you to actually create new files that are based on images that are sitting on your clipboard. It's a whole lot more intuitive. So anyway, I use the older version. It's a used legacy of, I think Photoshop should actually create a legacy menu because there's so many of these. All their improvements fucked everything up, and now they've got to put in all of this shit that allows people to unfuck it up. So anyway, this is one of them. So that's why I use the Use Legacy New Document. The Use Legacy Free Transform, you have to click on that. When we get into doing compositing and we are trying to scale in perspective, you can't do it using the new version of Transform because you don't have a control point. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Simply check this box. You'll be much happier. The beep when done. There are things that we'll do in this class that take time. If you run a Gaussian blur filter on a 1 gigabyte file, it takes a minute to do it. The beep when done will tell you it's been done. It notifies you and says, okay, we're ready to go again. And you're like, okay, great. So I have that. Export clipboard, the worst thing that can be set in Photoshop. Because anything that you copy to the clipboard is robbing your computer of memory. Whatever's on that clipboard has to be held in memory. That robs that memory from being able to for Photoshop to be able to use it. It is dead memory to you guys. Nobody, not anybody, copies images in Photoshop to a clipboard to get them out of Photoshop. Everybody exports them or saves them or does something, but nobody uses the clipboard to do this, so I turn that part off. The rest is default. You can leave it that way. Our next item down, the interface. In the interface right down here, I'm going to leave it pretty much set as its default. If you take the one thing that matters here is the color theme that's up at the very top. There's a lot of people who will actually set their screen to light to be able to judge certain things. The problem that you run into with a screen this light is that the way your eyes perceive color. Oh, okay, you guys all know that daylight is a different color than tungsten lights, right? Like these tungsten lights are warmer than the daylight window that's right out there. If I could get a picture of those lights and open up this window, if I color balance for those lights, the window would be hyper blue. If I color balance for that, the lights in here would be hyper orange. It's just, but we don't see it that way with our eyes. You just get that in film or in your digital capture, right? What happens with your eyes is that your eyes will actually look at the brightest thing in a scene that you're looking at and white balance that, whatever that is. So if you use this really light interface right here, your eyes are actually white balancing on the interface, not on your images. And so color casting that happens in your image, you won't see it because your eyes are actually color balancing, or you might see it, it might be it's just not real. Make sense? So at any rate, the dark one is another problem because the dark one gets so dark, any of the dark type that exists in Photoshop, you can't read it. So I typically go with the darker one right here. How many of you guys have pictures of your kittens or your dogs or your family or whatever is your screensaver, is your desktop image, right? Wrong. If you can see that through your image, that will actually pervert your sense of color. It will actually have an impact on your perception of the color of your screen. So most people, myself included, would come up to the Apple menu. I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this on Windows, but go up to the Apple menu to System Preferences, and under, I think it's Desktop and Screensavers. Yeah, Desktop. I'm not going to look through all of this, whatever. But anyway, there's a way to set your screen. This is what my Finder actually, my desktop looks like. It's the same color. It's that same dark gray. So this is a window. And it's for the same reason. How many of you guys, well, that's getting a little ahead of ourselves, so I don't want to go there yet. Okay, so back to this. That's where I'm going to leave this guy. The next one down, workspace. In terms of the workspace, the two things that I'm going to suggest, and again, this is a suggestion. You guys are more than willing to do, if you love tab behavior, go for it. I turn off the auto open documents as tabs, and I also turn off the enable floating document window docking. The reason I do this is I've already explained it. I don't like tab behavior at the top. If I've got multiple images open and I'm trying to take content from one image and move it into another, you can do it with tabs, but you have to remember what the tab really is because you don't see it. I don't like that behavior, so I don't use this. So I just turn it off. Again, it's entirely up to you to do whatever you want to do. I'm going to go to Tools next. In the tooltips, if you are new to Photoshop, I always leave on the show tooltips. So basically it means if you hover over something, it's not going to change because I've got this preference window open. But if you hover over something, it will give you the name of the tool. It's basically what it does. I like that part on there. This show rich tooltips now gives you a small little video so that if you are picking like the magic wand and you don't really know what it does, this little pop-out will give you this brief little video, and it'll play the video for you. I know what the magic wand does. I don't need this. So I actually turn this part off. But if you're just getting new to Photoshop, however, you might consider wanting to leave that one on. The rest of all of this is default as we go down here. Everything else here is default. You don't need to change anything. History. How many people here, I'm not even going to ask that question. History only works if you enable the history log. So you would actually click on this history log, and what happens is that you can save your history, and it's a history of what you do. That's what is basically going on here. So it's a history of, oh, Verser picked this brush, he made this stroke, he did that kind of stuff, whatever. That's what's really going on here. It's not the history like the history panel in Photoshop. This is not what this is at all. This is just a log. It's a series of steps that you'll see. That's all it is, right? You can actually bury that in the metadata of the file, or you can create a text file. If you click on text, it will actually open up and say, okay, we're going to save this text file. What do you want to call this? So what would you call a text file that you're working on? Oh, I've got a good idea. Why don't we give it the same name as our file? Oh, you mean the YYYYYMMDD that we've all decided to embrace because Verser told us we really should? Yeah. That way your text file actually, your text log actually stays with your image that you did all the work on. That sounds pretty clever. I'm not going to save mine right now because I don't want to do that part, but that's what it's about. You can also do both. If you click on both, then, actually, hang on one second. I am going to do a text file, and I'll leave it on my toss. Again, I would name this accordingly. But now, once you get the text file, it'll show it where it goes. You can actually do both, which will embed your history in the file, and it will also give you a text version of it. In terms of what you edit or what you keep, you can see this right here. In this drop-down menu, it's sessions only, concise, or detailed. Sessions only strictly are opening and closing Photoshop. That's all it is. You opened it or open and close your file. I opened the file. I opened it at 2:02 in the afternoon. I closed it the next day at 3 in the morning. Whatever. That's all it is. If you do the concise version of it, what the concise version does is it will tell you sort of the abbreviated version of what actually happened. So it'll say, oh, Verser picked the Magic Wand tool. And then Verser picked the healing brush tool, and then Verser picked the mixer brush tool, and then Verser picked the lasso tool, and that's all it does, right? It doesn't really give you a whole lot of information. However, this detailed one, if you click on this, and if you set this up just like this, in your life as a professional retoucher, you will then have a record of everything that you did on a file. So why would that matter? No, you can't go back and undo. This is just a record of what you've done. You can undo in history inside of Photoshop, but this is just a log of it. Yes? It's not so much accused, but you're on exactly on the right track. So you tell a client, you decide to be a professional retoucher, or it's just your side hustle. And you say to a client, they say, well, how much to retouch this image? And you say, $2,000. And they go, okay, fine, $2,000. I agree to do that, whatever. And then you do the work and you give them the image. And they say, well, it doesn't look like you did that much. I mean, I love the image, but it didn't look like you did that much. I'm not paying you the $2,000. What'd you do? If you do the text version, you guys know what a phone book is? Yes. I mean, you remember the old school like phone book? That's what these text files become. They're hundreds and hundreds of pages. And so you print it out and you walk in with your hundreds of pages and you say, this is what I did, fucker, pay me. Didn't cost you anything to do it. You're not the one keeping all the entries, but it's insane. Anyway, just a word. I don't keep logs like this because I don't retouch for other people, but anyway, something to keep in mind. In my case, I'm not going to keep the history log. In terms of file handling, all of this can stay at its defaults. There are a couple of things that you could change here. Every time you save a TIFF file, if it comes up with saying, do you want to compress the file, whatever, if you don't like that behavior, you can change it here. But for the most part, I feel like you should keep it. However, there is one incredibly important thing that you need to actually enable on this screen, and it's this automatically save recovery information every. You need to check that. Why it's not checked by default, I don't know. And then click on the drop-down menu and put in 10 minutes. What this will do is, if your computer crashes, your file has been saved every 10 minutes. So even if you didn't save it, there is a recovery file that you will actually have. When you go back into Photoshop, it will actually offer to open up everything that was open. You will not have your history, because that's gone, because Photoshop quit, and history is not sticky in Photoshop like it is in Lightroom. But at any rate, this thing will pull your ass out of the sling like you can't believe. So definitely something that you want on. The rest of it can stay at its defaults. The export, I don't fuck with this a whole lot. I'm going to show you guys how I actually do exporting for websites and for Instagram. I would just leave this at its default right now. If you find that you're never exporting a PNG and you're always exporting JPEGs, you can simply come in here and change that using this drop-down menu. But again, there's no real reason to spend time in here. Performance. How many of you guys have a computer that has at least 16 megabytes of RAM? Gigabytes of RAM. So if you've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, you could consider playing with this slider. What this thing really does is it's how you can say, I want this much RAM in your computer to be dedicated to Photoshop alone. Now, you can't do 100% of that because you need your computer to work. The OS of your computer needs some of that memory to do its job. How many of you, though, when you're actually working in Photoshop, have a browser open? Oh, come on, be honest. How many of you are playing music on Spotify at the same time? How many of you guys didn't bother to close Acrobat and you got that PDF that's laying around on that? You want to talk about robbing your computer of its ability to be quick and fast in Photoshop? All of those are gigantic memory hogs. Chrome's the worst, hands down. Hands down the biggest pig when it comes to memory. And so all of a sudden you open Chrome, you've got a 16 gigabyte machine, 5 of it goes to Chrome. Well, this 70% marker on this is meaningless. If you want speedy Photoshop, put Spotify on your phone or on your tablet or on something else, but keep your computer stripped down to run nothing but Photoshop. If you do that, you can actually then bump the memory that you dedicate to Photoshop a little bit more. Don't get greedy. You can get up into the 80. If you've got 32 gigabytes of RAM in your computer, then you can actually get up into the 85, 90, even 95%, because that 5% of, again, 32 gigabytes will be more than enough to run your system, your OS. Does that make sense? It's just a way to keep this moving. Performance, right? Okay. Use graphic processor. Has anybody in here ever had trouble with a file that all of a sudden had missing pixels? You get lines of it. You get a black line or a white line. Is that actually has it happened to you recently? If it's happening to you, this is the culprit right here. It's this graphics processor right here. There's some issue. So what happens is computers have two really main processors in them. They've got a general processor for the computer that does all the work, and then they have basically a video card. And Photoshop realized, well, the video card that's driving all the information for the screen, it's all about graphics, and Photoshop is graphics. So why don't we, instead of using the normal processor that every program uses, why don't we just offload all our stuff onto the video card and let the video card process it? It'll be a lot faster. And that's what's going on here. However, depending on how old your computer is or what video card you have or what version of Photoshop you're using, there can be incompatibilities. So where this really shows up a lot is in Liquify. If you don't know what Liquify is, that's fine. We're going to get to that. But if you do know what it is and all of a sudden shit is just not working, or stuff that you expect to move is not moving, or it's moving in a really weird way, or you start to get these really big empty blocks of image, you don't see anything, whatever. This is where you go, and for that file, you turn this graphics processor off. Questions? Okay, I am going to leave history and cache at its at its defaults. The history states we can leave at 50. What this is that, and if you've never used history in Photoshop, that's okay. But basically, what it is it tracks everything that you're doing in a file, and once you hit a 51st step, your very first step goes away. And so it only remembers 50 running. Does that sort of make sense? You can change this. You can make it 100, but the problem with that is that it then takes up memory, because again, all of these states need to be plugged into memory so that you are able to go back to that stuff. 50 is a good compromise. I'm going to suggest that you guys keep this exactly at its default. Image processing, this is actually a new one, relatively new for, is anybody here on any, go ahead.
The cage level said 2, and then on the bottom it said 128K, but that on there said 1,000 something. Am I supposed to change one?
Let me see what yours looks like.
It said well, I changed it to 4, but it said 2 and then it said 128.
Oh, in the cache, go ahead and say you want that to be 4? Yeah, and that 128K is okay because it's exactly the K, it represents those zeros. So you're good. Okay, image processing, the next one down. How many of you guys are using select subject in Photoshop? I just want to get through this part right here, guys, and then we'll take a break. So Photoshop now has actually, well, it's not just the AI that they've introduced, but going back at least a year, if not 2 years, Photoshop started to open up the possibility that it would take something that you were trying to do with your image, and instead of having your local computer do the processing for it, it would upload the image to Adobe servers, which are more powerful and faster, and it would actually do the work there and then give you the results back. Select subject is one of them. So if you click on the select subject button, you have the option of either having your computer do it. Yes.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is exactly what I asked you to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have image processing.
It's because this is an older version of Photoshop. So you can stick with this version of Photoshop, or you can actually just update to the newest version of
If
it.
I update it, will like all of this go into the updated one?
It
Or
will.
I have to do it again.
No, it'll all go. And there's even a better prize happening later on. So, okay. So, you can, the only thing you're changing here is the default behavior. The default behavior when this thing shifts is that your computer does the work. Because you also have to be connected to the internet for it to be actually Adobe's servers to actually do it. So if you're not doing any of that, whatever, but you could change this in Photoshop, it's just that you had to change it for every single image. If you know going right out of the gate, I always want Photoshop, I always want Adobe servers to do this work for me, you can change that. I prefer it that way. I don't use select subject a lot, but if you click on this drop-down menu, you can see that you can either do your device or the cloud. I would actually make that your cloud. And then in the selections processing, the more stable version, total, I think this is all default. I would leave it at that. It's not? Oh, then click on more stable. Faster is no good if things crash. Scratch disking. How many of you have gotten the dreaded your scratch disk is full and you're fucked? All right. You are not going to see this on the screen. You will hear this on the video recording, but we need to look at this on the whiteboard, and then we'll get through this and we'll take a break right after this. So hang in there for me one last time. If you need to stand up and shake it out, wake up, please do. That's a computer. This is why I'm a photographer, not a, not a, I always think of it more like it's like some like hut. It's like a hut in like Ethiopia in like 20 BC or something, right? It's like it's an igloo or I don't know. It's anyway, just work with me here, okay? And this is a hard drive. So in my hard drive, I'm going to just say, let's say this is a terabyte hard drive, not that that really matters. And I've got a file on this hard drive, my file that I'm working with, and it's 1 gigabyte. Does that make sense to everybody what's going on? So it's just, I've got a file that I'm working, that I'm going to work with, an image file that's on my hard drive. I want to open it up in Photoshop, I want to do some work on it, and then save the file. That's all I want to do, really? Okay, great. So let's say that in my computer, I'm only going to do 4 gigabytes of RAM here. Again, most of you guys have 8, 16, some of you have 32. Some of you could even, there's desktops that will actually hold 64 and on up. So I'm going to keep it at 4 just because it keeps it as a dull roar. So I'm going to do 4 slots of RAM. So this is 1 gigabyte here, 1 gigabyte here, 1 here, and 1 here. So I've got my 4 gigabytes of RAM. Does that make sense, everyone, what's going on? Okay. So I find the file on my computer, on my hard drive, and I double click on it, and what happens is this actually gets written into this first gigabyte RAM slot, and it shows up in Photoshop and everything's great. But then I do a change. I actually put a curve on it. Whatever the change is, it doesn't matter. What Photoshop then does is it actually says, okay, because it wants to give me history, it wants to be able to go back in time. So it gives me history. So what it does, so right now this is going to be my first state right here. What Photoshop does is it writes the first version, what I did, just the opening file, what it looks like, and then it gives me the second version that I'm actually viewing right here, and this is now. So the first version was just it opened. The second is it's open and it has the curve. Make sense? So then I make another change. I actually make a selection and I save the selection. So then what happens is these guys get rewritten. 1 comes down into the third state of RAM, 2 comes into the middle, and then 3 is the current version that I'm looking at. And this is all great. If I decide that I want to go back to my first version, I simply click on that state in history and it knows it's this guy right here and it just reloads what's in here and it's fast and it's great. Because RAM is electronic. Hard drives are now mostly electronic if you're using SSDs, but old school, they were actually spinning disks. They were much slower, but nonetheless, it still gives you the same idea. Does this make sense to everybody what's going on here? Okay. Remember we set the number of states earlier in that and we set 50 history states? Well, I've got a problem here. I've only got 4 possible states. If I actually do all 4, I'm going to do another change. I'm going to crop the image or something. Whatever it is you do is another state, right? So I'm going to have 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here. But now I make another change. I've got 50 history states. What happens? I've only got 4 slots here. So what happens is that Photoshop, in its infinite wisdom, it takes the first history state and it writes it back to the hard drive, and this becomes my first state. And then all of these move down. So this becomes 2, this is 3, this is 4. Now I've got 5 history states. 4 of them, the last 4 are in RAM. 1 of them is sitting back here on my hard drive. Now the thing that's on my hard drive, it's taking up hard drive space, but you never see it. This is done in an invisible partition, so you never see it. However, the more you keep doing this, the more these grow. So let's say now I get to, I'm going to jump forward to 10, and this would be 10, this would be 9, 8, 7. I have got 6, 5, 4, 3, sorry, that's, yeah, wait, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1 is here, and 2 is here. All of this, those history states, are all sitting in an invisible partition on my hard drive. But it's taking up space on my hard drive. Now, if I want to go back to my state number 1, I simply click on the number 1 in the history panel. It takes a little bit of time because it has to load this first state back into the computer again, and that's not as efficient as if it's actually kept in RAM here, which is actually much faster. Does that sort of give you some idea of what's going on? But the rub in all of this is that you're taking up space on your hard drive, and your hard drive has got a limited amount of space. And if you reach the point where you completely take up all the space on your hard drive, you get that dreaded warning that says your scratch disk is full. But even worse, you have no space on your hard drive. You can't save your file. So you're just fucked. That's what scratch disking is all about. So does that make sense? That invisible partition here is called a scratch disk. So I need everybody, if you're on Mac, I don't know how you do this on Windows, I apologize, but do a quick Google search, you'll find out. You need to find out how much room you actually have, free space that you have on your hard drive. So if you are doing Macintosh, you simply click on your hard drive. Can you guys all see your hard drive on your Macintosh? Because if you can't, you need to set it up in your Finder Preferences to do that. So go up to Finder Preferences, not Photoshop, but Finder Preferences, and say in the general that you want to see all of this shit. You want to see your hard drives, external disks, CDs, and connected servers. I want to see everything on here. Once you do that, your main hard drive will show up. If you click on it once and do Command-I, which is Get Info, or come up to the File menu and do a Get Info, it will actually give you the information you're looking for, the capacity of your hard drive and the available space. You want a minimum of 10% of free space. Minimum. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and bet you there's not a single laptop in this room that's got 10% free space on it. Not one. You guys keep everything. You keep all your videos and your music files and all that, all of that kind of shit. So you need to look at this, because if you've got less than 10%, it affects the performance of your computer as well as the performance of Photoshop. But the likelihood that you're going to bump into a scratch disk error is huge. Offload the files that you're not using, put them on a hard drive, put them somewhere else. Does that make sense?
How did you get there?
So I just went to the Finder. I clicked on my hard drive. Do you have this?
Yeah.
Okay. And then just go over to your File menu and come down to say Get Info. The keyboard shortcut is Command-I, and it should show you right there. It shows you the capacity. I have 1 terabyte. And then the availability. So I've got almost 20% available space on mine. If you don't have at least 10%, you've got to start weeding stuff off of your computer. As long as we're talking about it, and it's the last thing, we'll take a quick break, I swear. How many of you guys have a solid backup system for all your files? How many don't? No one will admit that. Okay, all of you guys do, and what is your backup system? Anybody? Go for it.
I have an external, and then I also upload to Dropbox.
Oh, okay, so you've got cloud and an external together. That's actually a really solid system, yeah.
I have 2 hard drives. I have 1 2 terabyte that I carry with me, and then I have 1 5 terabyte that I leave in my desk.
Oh, okay. So, but when you say your desk at your house?
At my house, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So when you go home and you're sitting there, at your desk, whatever, you plug the external in, and you copy. So there's copies of both of them, right? And life's great. And then you go to bed and your house burns down.
I cry.
Oh, that's not a good answer. No, the plumbing breaks, floods your desk, right? A good backup system, 1, 2, 3 system. 1 is your primary. It can either be a hard drive or it can be the external one on your computer. The second one is the external that you're actually talking about. So you're 2/3 of the way there. That's good. But the third one is a copy of all the same data offsite. So your cloud stuff will work fine for that. But be wary of cloud. Dropbox is a pretty serious company, so I wouldn't get too nervous about that. There's a guy who still is a photographer, Seth. I can't remember Seth's last name. Anyway, probably the number one stock photographer in the country, had 6 terabytes of his data on an online file service, and they sent him an email on a Friday saying, we're shutting down, you have till Sunday to get it off. And he could only get half of it off. He lost half of his work. Yeah. If you don't have a backup, and I mean solid backup plan, you don't care about your work because you will lose it. There's not a hard drive that's ever been made that will not fail. There's certainly not an SSD that's ever been made that will not fail. It's a given. It's just when. Yes? Yeah?
So you know how you said that you need at least 10%?
Yes.
So how do you get rid of stuff? Like after you copy it to a hard drive, do you just throw it in the trash?
You do. That's exactly what you do. So again, the things to go after are the big ones. So go after video files first. They're the biggest by far. So that's the first thing to look for. And then after that, it's not going to be, image files are going to be right next to that. So if you've got work that you did 2 years ago that's still there, I'm not suggesting you throw that away. I'm suggesting that you archive that off onto a hard drive to free up space on your computer, because otherwise this is going to happen. Okay. So I've got 3:15 according to my computer. Be back at 3:25. Let's make this a hard 10, please, and we'll keep going.